Yeah, it's been another beautiful day, and a good day to end up singing these praises to our Heavenly Father and worshiping Him, and just thankful for the presence of everyone tonight. And I always encourage, if you have questions or comments, be sure and bring those to our attention. We'd be glad to sit down with you and discuss those things at a time that would be convenient for you. Tonight we're going to look at the subject, what treasure are you leaving your children? You know, when you think about, as you get older, I know I do, you think about dying, because you're going to die. You're just getting closer to death. And while you don't really think about it just all the time, but you just realize that's a part of life. And it's something you don't think about a whole lot when you're young. When you're young, you've got a lot of things going on, and you've got kids, and you're raising those kids. But then as you get older and you begin to have grandchildren and things, you begin to realize, you know, my life's coming to an end. You know, that's just the way it's going to be. And as you think about leaving this earth, well, you think about, what am I going to leave my children? What will I leave my grandchildren? You begin to think about those things because you do want to leave them something. And so, when I think about the treasure you're leaving your children, you know, we think about leaving an inheritance. And so we all leave something behind. We know when we die, we're not taking anything with us. We're not even taking clothes on our back. We're leaving everything behind. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, the Apostle Paul writes, "Now godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out." And so we're not taking anything with us. We're actually leaving everything behind. Now, when we think about leaving our children, over in Luke chapter 15, there's a very familiar story to most all of us, and that would be the story of the prodigal son, the wayward son. We know that there was a man here, he had two sons, verse 11 says. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me." So he divided them to his livelihood. Now, you think about the son. Here's a son, he couldn't even wait for his parents to die. He wanted his inheritance. And, you know, that's the way some children are. They're just not too interested about anything but greed, but money, but whatever their parents can give them of a physical nature. That's all they're really concerned about, and that's all this young boy was thinking about. He was thinking about the money, the portion of his inheritance. He wants it right now. He doesn't want to wait later, doesn't want to wait till that time when his father passes away. He wants it right now, and that's the way a lot of children are. And of course, his father, he divided the inheritance. He went ahead and gave him his portion. And we know what happened with the prodigal son. He took it, he wasted it. He lived a wasteful life. He wasted it in various forms of immoral living. Now, we think about a physical inheritance. You know, Proverbs chapter 19 says that house and wealth are an inheritance from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. When you think about house and health, we're going to leave that behind. All that's going to be left behind when we die. Our children will get our house, our physical property, our cars, whatever we have around us. You know, our children are going to have them, or someone around us is going to have them. That's a part of leaving this earth behind. But a spiritual inheritance is far better than anything material than we can leave them. Look over in 2 Corinthians 12 and verse 14. Paul writes, "Here for this third time I am ready to come to you, and I'll not be a burden to you, for I do not seek what is yours, but you. For children are not responsible to save up for their parents, but parents for their children." And so it is the natural thing, the natural way of life, that parents leave something behind to their children. And when we think about what we're going to leave behind, what truly is a treasure to be left behind to our children, you think about the spiritual teaching, the spiritual things that we can leave behind. That's of far more value than any material things. In fact, some of the material things we might leave them might cause them to lose their soul. They may not know how to handle some of those physical things. They might not know how to handle wealth or houses or whatever. Some people, lose their soul fighting over what the parents left behind. And so that happens from time to time. But if we think about leaving our children something spiritual behind, something that will keep them for eternity, that's the truly valuable thing that we can leave them. As parents, we are to be teachers. And those of us here who are parents, and most are, we have to realize we're to be teachers. We're to teach our children about God and His Word. Over in Deuteronomy chapter 6, if you stop to think about it, if parents don't teach their children, then who's going to teach their children about God? Because if you stop to think about the world and what the world teaches about God, it's obviously false. It's obviously not what God would have you to teach your children. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, and this is of course pertaining to the Old Testament, to the law of Moses, but the principle here would certainly apply to the New Testament as well. Moses writes, "And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart." Now that's the first thing. If we're going to teach our children, and we really want them to learn what we teach them, it has to first be in our heart. We have to study. We have to learn. We have to have a true, sincere love for God and His Word. Because, most likely if we're not sincere, if we're playing the part of a hypocrite, our children will pick up on it. They'll realize we don't really mean what we're saying. And so as Moses starts out, he starts out that it shall be in your heart. So these words are to be in our hearts. He said, you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Now notice how diligently we're to go about teaching our children. It's not something we just do one time a week. Not something we do Sunday morning. Well, let's teach our children their Bible class lesson. This is something you teach on a daily basis, an ongoing basis. And again, you think about how your children learn things. How many of them watch a cartoon, and they watch that cartoon over and over and over? And then they want to come back and they want to watch that same cartoon. It may be Frozen this time of year. It may be another cartoon next year. It'll be something else that Disney puts out they want your kids to watch. And they'll watch it, and they'll watch it, and they'll know the names of all the characters. They'll know what they're wearing. They'll understand the dress. They'll want to go to the store and buy some of the little figurines, Well, how many hours do they spend watching those things? Well, now, how many hours do you spend teaching them about God and about His Word? And which one is going to be more valuable to them for eternity? Again, there's nothing wrong with a little entertainment if it's good, clean entertainment. Nothing wrong with that. Compare it to how much we actually spend time teaching our children about God. And so when you go back over here and you think you teach them diligently, you have to work at this. You do it diligently, and you do it when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. He's saying all the time you be teaching your children. And that doesn't mean you sit down and teach them like a student with a textbook in hand. But as you're doing your work throughout the day, maybe even as you're engaged in some form of recreation with them, you look for opportunities to bring up something about God, something about the Word of God, something about an example that you can drive home a lesson from God's Word. And you look for that opportunity throughout the day, from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. That's what he says. Now, parents, we're to be teachers. Sometimes, parents will have children, they fall away, and they just, down there at the church, they just didn't teach them anything. And we blame it on the Bible class teacher, maybe the preacher. No, it's the parents' responsibility. Now, how many times do we teach our children about, you need to get your school lessons? You got to learn to read, you got to learn to write, you got to learn to add and subtract. And we really emphasize that. When they come home from school, did you get your homework? Do you have any homework? And we really emphasize that because we're thinking about a materialistic goal. You have to have that in order to make money. You have to have money in order to buy things, you say. And obviously there's some value in those things. But how much time do we try to impress upon them the need to know about God and about true spiritual values that come from God's Word? Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. Paul says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Just right. It's just that simple. Children, you listen to what your parents say, you do what they say, because it's right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you, and you may live long on the earth. And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. And notice this charge is given especially to fathers. And yet how many times do we see it's the mothers who are seeing that the children are taught Bible lessons, and that the lessons they do for Sunday and Wednesday, that the mothers are doing, and the fathers aren't sitting down with the children and aren't going over their lessons and talking to them about God and the value of a knowledge of God. And so again, God charges those of us who are parents with this responsibility. And yes, Bible class teachers are good. Preachers, elders, others who can teach, that's fine. And those are things that help, that kind of adds to what the parent is already teaching the child. So first, the parent learns the truth. The parent has a true, sincere love for God. And then the parent's charged with carrying that to the children, taking that to them and teaching them, trying to instill that same love for God that they have. Parents must point their children in one direction or another like an arrow. The psalmist says in Psalm 127 verse 4, like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. You think about an arrow, it's going to go where you aim it. If you just don't aim it, you just randomly shoot it, there's no telling where it may go. It may hit a mark, it may not hit the mark. Most likely, it won't hit the mark. We should be trying to train our children to go in a certain direction. Now, our children are free moral agents. They're still going to make up their own mind at some time whether they're going to go the way that we point them. But the fact is, if you don't point them, if you don't train them to go a certain direction, more than likely they won't go the right direction. And so we need to be training them to go in the right direction. Point them toward God. Point them toward Jesus Christ. Teach them how much God loves them. Teach them how they are responsible to God for the conduct, the way they conduct themselves in their life. And so we point them that direction, and we try to mold them and shape them to go. And hopefully they'll go that way. They'll make those right choices as they get older. Like I said, without aiming, without working, pointing them in that direction, the world will almost surely see to it they don't go in the direction of God. What will you leave your children? One thing we need to leave our children is a good example, a role model. Now, there are cases, and we see this at times, where somebody has sorry parents. You know, it may be both parents, it may be just one parent, and that child, as that child grows, gets older, does turn in the right direction. Learn the truth, obey the gospel, and they don't want to live like their parents. But as parents, and especially as godly parents, shouldn't we want to leave our children a godly example? Now, when we die, when we leave, and there is something left behind, whether it's a house or money or whatever it is, little or much, doesn't really matter. Would you rather your children think of you as someone who loved God and put God first, and that's what they remember foremost about you? Or would you rather remember, you know, they left me some money behind, they left me a nice house behind, they think of you for the physical things you left and not the spiritual thing? What would you rather them really think about you? Do they see you as just a material thing like a bank? Or do they see you as someone who loves God, who appreciates God? In Ezekiel chapter 16, and verse 44, Ezekiel was prophesying at the time of the Babylonian captivity, and Ezekiel makes this statement. He says, indeed, everyone who quotes Proverbs will use this Proverbs against you, like mother, like daughter. The mother was wicked, the daughter was wicked. The mother departed from God, the daughter departed from God. Or the mother was good. The mother loved God, and the daughter was good. The daughter loved God. Many times that's the way our children go. The way our children go, they follow our example. Again, not in every case, but if we are a bad example, in most cases they'll follow that bad example. And we certainly want to leave them that good example. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 5, Paul tells Timothy, when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you. Paul's thinking about Timothy now. He's thinking about the faith that Timothy has and how that faith is genuine. That faith is sincere. Notice what he says next. Which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. You notice it started with Lois. She was a godly woman. She was a good example for her daughter Eunice. And then Eunice was a godly woman and a good example for her child Timothy. You notice how it just followed in the family. One good role model had another example of a good role model, a third example, and of course we know the example of Timothy. We know that he followed, had that genuine faith. And so again, will I leave my children a good example? My children may look at my funeral and say, well, he didn't leave me any wealth. But he left me a godly example. And that's more valuable than any amount of money you can leave me, is that godly example. How about a good name? A good reputation. You know, there's some people whose children would be ashamed of them because of the way they live their life, and at death they really don't want to inherit anything they left them. Over in Proverbs chapter 22, Proverbs chapter 22, the Solomon here makes this point about a reputation. He said, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Think how contrary that is to the world we live in. We live in a materialistic world, a world that says let's get everything we can get. And we think everything is owed to us. We think we deserve to have everything that the world offers. And so many people live their life in pursuit of as much of this world as they can get. And yet, here he says, a good name is to be chosen. Think about Bernie Madoff. Think about his name. Those of you who know Bernie Madoff, he's a shyster. He's a con man. He tell you how many millions of dollars he stole from people. Think about his children. Think about what they carry. I'd say most of them probably like to change their name. They wouldn't want to tell anybody they were a Madoff or Madoff, whatever, however you pronounce it. Well, a good name is to be chosen. You can have a good name. I know people that, I don't know what their material wealth is, but I know them to be honest, reputable people. I know you can trust what they say. And that means far more than how much money they may have accumulated. And so, are we leaving a good name? Someone who is trustworthy, somebody who's honest, somebody who is sincere and genuine in this life. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 1, he said, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. That's only better if you're a child of God, obviously. If you're a faithful child of God, the day of your death will be better than the day of your birth. But a good name is better than precious ointment. How important is it to leave our children a good name? Then also we need to leave our children a memory of a proper religion. Over in Jeremiah chapter 17, Jeremiah was prophesying at a time before the tribe of Judah and Benjamin were taken into Babylonian captivity. And God is repeatedly telling them how they are going into captivity because of their sinful, evil ways, because of their idolatry. And he said, the sin of Judah, beginning in verse 1, is written with a pen of iron. With the point of a diamond, it is engraved on the tablet of their heart. Think about the sin. In other words, it's engraved in their heart. In other words, you can't go in there and just take a little bit of eraser and take that out. It's engraved in their heart. They had sinned and sinned. It had become so much a part of their life, you couldn't get it out of their heart. That's what he's saying. He said in verse 2, he says, while their children remember their altars and their wooden images by the green trees on the high hills. What do their children remember? What they saw their parents do. Their parents committed idolatry. Their parents committed sin by falling down and worshiping false gods, idols. And that's what the children remember. How about you? What will your children remember? They remember you coming to services. You coming to services on a regular basis. Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday night, to gospel meetings. When I was growing up, I never, and all the times I lived at home, I never asked the question, are we going to church? Because I knew we were going to church. See? That's what I knew. I knew that because I grew up as a babe. I didn't know much, obviously, but as I got older, we always went to church. And the older I got, Sunday, Wednesday, gospel meeting, we always went to church. And so there was never a doubt in my mind, never even a question even be asked, are we going to church? We were just going to church. We got our clothes, and on those days, I even had to make sure my shoes were polished on Saturday. We cleaned up and had our clothes, had our Sunday clothes. They were different from our weekly clothes. We had our Sunday clothes. And we put those clothes on Sunday, and that's what we wore. And Wednesday night came, well, sometimes we had ball games. And as I got older, got to be in Little League, we had ball games. And every now and then we'd have a rain out on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and they'd play the makeup game on a Wednesday. You know what? What I did when I was 10, 11, 12, that we had to, I asked, do I have to go tonight? We've got an important game. Only had to ask that once. I knew the answer, but I asked anyway. You can go to the game, but at 7:15, we're pulling you out. At 7, where we played ball, you could see the church building, so I could play up to 7:15, and I'd go to the services on Wednesday night in a Little League Dodger uniform. Because I wasn't going to miss services. When I was 10, 11, 12, I thought, man, how important that game was. But then as I got older, I realized they were teaching me a much more valuable lesson. That serving God and going to services was more important than any kind of recreation. And that you always put God first. What do our children see in us? Are we living them a memory? And I was taught, as I was growing up, that there wasn't but one church. And that denominational churches were false. And I was taught that the Catholics were wrong. I was taught to look in my Bible, and here's what the Bible says about the church. And from a youth up, I was taught about the worship of the church and the work of the church. I was taught things, and you learn them when you go sit in Bible class. You learn them when you hear your parents talk about it. But as you get older, you realize they're teaching you something. And I don't know at what age I realized, but I, reached some point where, I'd already made well, if I'm not going to go to the Lord's church, I'm not going to any church. Because I at least knew enough to know those were all false. And so we leave our children with a memory of a proper religion, the true religion. And if they do grow up, and God forbid they depart from the things that we taught them, at least they know about the one true church. At least they know where they can return to. Think of the prodigal son. He knew where he could go back to. And then we give them a spiritual education. Proverbs 22, verse 6, most of us know it by heart. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart. And we understand that that's a general statement. It's like some of the other statements in the Proverbs that, if you speak calmly to someone, that they'll settle down. But that's not always the case. In most cases that's true, but not always the case. Well, we still have to educate our children. We have to teach them, instruct them, and it's the parents' job to educate the children. And so, as parents, we have to set aside time. I think of Bible classes like Sunday and Wednesday night. Those are good things, and they help parents because parents can teach those Bible lessons to their children. And then when their children go to class, they will know the lesson. And that will help the teacher out. It will help the other students out. But certainly it's good for the child. And so parents are to educate their children. Like I said a little while ago, the world's not going to do it. The school's not going to do it. There were times, when people talked about getting all in an uproar about prayer in public school. Well, really, the the people praying in public school when I was growing up, they weren't Christian. The prayers weren't even something that related to much of what you read about in the Bible. It's not the responsibility of the public school to teach religion. And I don't want most of those that I know who are teachers teaching my children about religion. Because if they did, they'd teach it wrong. They need to be taught by parents. They need to be taught by godly people. They need to be taught the truth. And so we have to give our children a spiritual education. Jesus' parents taught him in Luke 2, verse 52. He grew. He grew in those areas like wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Notice, he was taught. He had a godly mother, a godly father, who set godly examples and taught him as well. And so we have to have a spiritual education. And then, as I said a minute ago, a memory of a godly home. You go back over to Luke chapter 17 where we were a few minutes ago. You have the prodigal son, and this happens. It happens in our lives and in our families. And you think about this prodigal son's father. He taught him the truth. He was a godly example. The son went up, and of course he had free moral agency. He wanted to go check out the wild side. He wanted to live that way, so he thought he knew the best way to live in life. He took the money, headed to a far country, and lived that way. The father didn't chase him down. And the father didn't continue to send him money when he got in a bad way. And what I see some parents do today, they have ungodly children or ungodly grandchildren. And their children are out here in the world and they get themselves in all kinds of messes because a lot of times of their ungodliness. They don't have rent money, they don't have food money, they don't have money to take care of their family. And here come the parents. They give them just a little bit of money to keep them going, to keep them in the pigsty. And they just keep them in the pigsty, you see, where the parents should just stay at home, let those kids suffer, you'll be ridiculed, you'll be made fun of, you'll be talked about as being harsh and unloving, but it's the most loving thing you can do for that child. Maybe that child will get like this prodigal son. He'll get so far down that it'll cause him to remember the house he grew up in. Remember the godly parents who loved him. Over in Luke 15, verse 17, but when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? See, when it got really bad, he remembered what it was like at home. He thought, when he was at home, he evidently didn't care for it. He didn't like it. He thought there was a better world out there. But he got so far down eating with the pigs, he realized, home wasn't that bad. And he wanted to go home. Now, what if his father would have given him just enough money to keep him out of that pigsty? When would he have come home? When it's necessary, it becomes necessary sometimes to withdraw from the ungodly. Those ungodly may be our children. And the Bible tells us we're not to eat, not to associate, not even to eat with them. And why? Because we love them. And because we love God and is trying to save their soul. God knows how to save their soul. Sometimes we think we know better than God. And I know of numbers of parents who say, I just couldn't do that to my child. And their child stays in sin and lives in sin and never comes to repentance. If you want to save your children, you obey God. And it's painful. Discipline is painful, and it's especially painful on those who have to administer it. But you're looking for the greater good. That's what you're looking for. That prodigal remembered that godly home. And he came home and was greeted by a father who loved him and who had been looking down that road for him. We need to give them a set of roots that will hold them down. That's why you teach. That's why you live a godly life. That's why you tell the truth. That's why you always do what you say you're going to do. That's why you treat people the way Christ teaches you to treat them. That's why you don't take vengeance on your enemies. That's why you don't curse. That's why you don't watch filthy things on television and in the entertainment world. That's why you teach your children. Because you're giving your children roots in a godly home. Train up. That child needs to be trained up in the way they should go. Doesn't mean they'll always go that way, but many times they'll go the way that they're trained up. And then we have to teach them respect for those in authority. It begins in the home. Parents, you have to teach your children to respect you. You don't do that by letting them run all over you, by sassing you, by talking back, by throwing tantrums, and you don't do anything. You have to discipline your children in order to teach them to respect your authority. Now, again, that's a painful thing. Just like when they get older, it's painful. As parents, it's not something we enjoy. We don't enjoy spanking our children. We don't enjoy punishing them for things they do. But we do it because they need to learn to respect us. And respect begins in the home. Respect for the mother, respect for the father. And then as they learn to respect the mother and father, they learn to respect others in society that they need to respect. And then they learn to respect God in heaven. And so it all begins right in the home. You think about our society today. You look at our cities, you look at our inner cities, you look at all the problems that exist, and you can look at the home. You can look at the home in all these areas. You see children that are not brought up in godly homes. It's sad because the children don't even know better. They haven't been trained up in the proper way. They've been trained up, but not in the proper way. And so sadly, the children don't even know what's best for them. And so you have riots in the street. You have, all kinds of problems with sexual immorality. You have problems with drugs. You have problems with alcohol. You have problem after problem after problem, and it all starts in the home. In many cases, there is no home for many of these children. That's the sad thing. You can look back, and if you look back at our history, those of us who are probably my age, which is I'm 62 and older, we were around and just beginning to understand things in the 60s. I didn't know a lot, but I learned some. Then as I got into the 70s, I began to see it. But in the 60s, we came up with a plan, and it was Lyndon B. Johnson that came up with this plan. And it was the idea of welfare, and it was the Great Society. And what he did in the Great Society was destroy the black family. He destroyed them. With all the government giveaways that were supposed to make things better, he ended up taking the fathers out of the home, leading to more and more unwed pregnancies, more and more problem, and the black family was decimated. And now we can look back and say, yep, that happened, and it began back in that period of time when the government decided to replace the father in the home. The government decided they knew better how to raise and take care of a family than the parents. And now look at that whole race of people in our culture. And that's bleeding over into the white race. We see it in all our systems where the homes are destroyed. It all goes back to the home. Respect for authority starts right there. And then a good work ethic. Parents, we have to teach our children to work. Even if we have money, we still need to teach our children the value of that money. And that money does not grow on trees. I mean, if they want something, they're going to realize you have to work for something. It's not wrong to give our children gifts or even give our children, grandkids gifts. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that, they have to be taught to take care of their things. And then as they get older and as they are able to do things, we teach them you have to work. Work has become a dirty word in our society. Most people are trying to look for a way not to work. But work is good, and our children need to understand that. And how do you acquire things to take care of your family, to take care of your children, to buy the things you want? You go out and work. I've tried to tell young people, if you start when you get out of high school or college, whichever the choice is, if you'll just find a job, doesn't matter what job it happens to be, you'll show up on time, you'll be there, you'll work, you show a good work ethic, and you'll make it in that job. You'll be promoted in that job, and you'll make more money in that job. And as time goes on, depending on the size of the company, you'll do better and better in that job. And then somebody else may see you who comes in and they may try to hire you away. But people with a poor work ethic, they work a little and they take off every opportunity, they call in sick, they don't work, they'll never have nothing in this life. Parents, we have to teach our children. I know when I was real young, 7, 8 years old, I had to go clean out the flower beds. My mother had flower beds all the way around the house, and I hated them. I didn't like it. And I had to pull out the weeds one at a time by hand. We worked because we lived there at the house. We ate there at their table. And my older brothers, they had to mow the grass. I couldn't wait till I got old enough to mow the grass and to get out of that flower bed. But we were being taught lessons. And then as I got older, I got to work at the lumber yard. And if I wanted something, I had to go earn the money to get it. If I wanted a bicycle, if I wanted to go on a date, there wasn't parents just giving up. They were teaching me, you have to work. Our children need to learn that they need to work and have a good work ethic. And then we have to teach our children to fear God and keep His commandments. By far the most important thing we can teach them. To have a reverent fear of God. God needs to be worshiped in our homes. God needs to be respected in our homes. We need to teach our children that God's commandments are true and they are right. And we need to follow His commandments above any of the commandments of men. That serving God comes first. And then respect and care for others. I think of mothers who can take their children to the nursing home or to visit the elderly. Maybe some elderly in the congregation or elderly in the neighborhood. Take some food over there, maybe go over there and clean up their house, Teach them to respect those who are older and help those who are in need. Young men can be carried over to somebody's house to mow grass. I know we had some widow ladies where I grew up, and different ones in the church. It was passed around during the summer. We'd go over and mow the yard and clean up their yard and that sort of thing, help take care of them. And so you teach them to look out for others, that there are others who are less fortunate, others who have needs that need to be taken care of. And it's our responsibility. It's not the government's. Let's don't wait for some government program to come. That won't help them. We help them. And I help the ones in my circle, my sphere. You help the ones in yours. You teach your children those things. And that's how you help the world. And that's how Christianity can be spread in a community. And when you think about some questions that are related to parents. In 2 Samuel 18, verse 29, David asked this question, and David asked this question about his son Absalom. His son had rebelled against him. His son had tried to kill him and take his kingdom. And they had to go to war against him. And after the battle was over, when someone returned from the battlefield, David asked, "Is the young man safe?" He wanted to know about his son. He wasn't concerned about the kingdom, wasn't concerned about all the... He wanted to know about the condition of his son. Of course, he learned his son was killed in the battle. A great heartbreak to him. But how about your child? Is the young girl, is the young boy safe? Have they been taught God's Word? Do they know God? Do they love God? That's more important than how much money we're going to leave, what kind of house we're going to leave, any material thing we could leave them behind. Are they at peace with God? And then over in 2 Kings 4, verse 26, we find a case where you have a widow, or not a widow, but a lady who had been barren and she had a child. And then she lost the child. She runs to Elisha. And Elisha could tell something was wrong. And he asked her, "Is it well with the child? Is it well with the child?" How about your children tonight? Is it well with your children? And these are questions you think as you get older and you think about your children. You look back and, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have spent more time teaching my children about God and His Word. I wish I'd have spent more time teaching them godly values. Well, if you've got children, you've got them at home, now's the time to do it. And after they grow up and they leave home, it's too late. It doesn't take very long and they're gone. And once they leave that house, you've had your opportunity to teach them. Is it well with the child? In Isaiah 39, verse 4, Isaiah has asked this question: what have they seen in thy house? He's talking about the Babylonians who'd come over, and Hezekiah had taken them, and Hezekiah had shown them everything in the house. And he asked them the question of what have they seen in thy house? Now the question to you though, what have your children seen in your house? Have they seen parents who love the Lord, who put the Lord first and foremost in their lives? Have they seen parents who attend the services, parents who believe the golden rule, practice the golden rule? What have they seen in your house? There's sometimes you'll see children get up, they'll reach a certain age, maybe 18, and at the first opportunity they bolt. They get out of the house, and they don't want anything to do with the house anymore. And you go and you try to talk to them, and they usually won't even talk to you. They won't give you a reason why, but soon you find out that the things that were going on in that home weren't always godly things. And the children didn't see godly examples, he saw hypocrites. And so it was a total turnoff to religion. And they had no faith in God, and they couldn't be reached. What do your children see in your house? Well, what treasure will we leave behind? We will leave something behind. What is it that we will leave behind? I hope the lesson causes us to think. And I hope it causes us, if we see areas in our homes that we need to change, then I hope we'll make those changes. Because now is the time to teach your children. And if you have influence over your grandchildren, now's the time to teach them. will soon reach an age when they may not can be reached. If you're here tonight and you're not a Christian, we want to encourage you to obey the gospel. First, you obey the gospel. You love the Lord, you confess your faith in Him, you repent of your sins, and you be baptized for the remission of those sins. And if you're a child of God but there's sin in your life, you know you've not been the godly example you ought to be. Maybe you know your children have seen ungodliness in your life. Then repent of that sin. And let your children know you weren't behaving right, but you're going to change. And show your children a godly example. You need to respond to the invitation. Won't you come right now while we stand, while we sing.